All right, let's dive in. Today we're exploring Olga Tokarczuk's flights.
Ooh, this one's a trip.
Yeah, it's not your typical novel. It's more like a collection of thoughts.
A kaleidoscope.
Yeah, exactly. Like a kaleidoscope of stories, reflections, observations, all kind of woven together around this theme of travel, the human body, and what it even means to be human.
Yeah, Tokarczuk really throws the whole beginning, middle, and end structure right out the window. It's more like she just gives you a box of puzzle pieces and says, go figure it out, you know? Like these vivid little moments, fascinating characters, historical tidbits. It's up to you to connect the dots.
It's challenging, but it's so rewarding too.
Definitely. And that's what she calls constellationality,
Yeah.
understanding experiences as these interconnected moments, not a straight line, kind of like stars in a constellation,
I
right?
love that analogy. And even the index is like a puzzle itself. It's not a straightforward list of topics. It's more like poetry. You see entries like Serera, the Achilles tendon, and Chopin's heart.
It's like she's giving you the sneak peek at the depth of the book and hinting at these surprising connections she makes.
Right. So our mission today is to kind of untangle those connections, explore what they reveal about ourselves and the world around us.
Perfect. Let's get started. Maybe a good place to start is with the narrator's childhood by the Oder River. Remember that scene?
Oh, absolutely. That image of the narrator, just a child mesmerized by this constantly moving river, but also feeling this kind of unsettling vastness to it.
It's such a powerful way to introduce those themes right from the start. That human fascination with movement, but also our unease with the sheer scale of things.
You know, it's funny how that early experience sets the stage for so much of the book. It really stays with the narrator, doesn't it?
Totally. You see that restlessness, that urge to explore and understand throughout their life, their abandoned psychology career, the choice to become a travel writer, always moving, seeking, questioning.
Always searching for something.
Exactly. And it makes you think, how does that tie into the structure of the book? The way it jumps between stories and time periods.
Well, yeah, good point.
Think of it this way. It's not a portrait of the narrator's life. It's like a mosaic,
Yeah.
right? Each piece is important, but it's the connections between them that really create the full picture. Tokarczuk really makes you work for it, you know?
She really does. But that's part of what makes it so engaging, right? You have to be an active participant in creating meaning.
Yes. And that brings us to, I think, one of the most intriguing things in the book, the exploration of what Tokarczuk calls travel psychology.
Travel psychology. Okay, I'm listening.
So she suggests that different airports actually have their own kind of psychological profiles.
Wait, so like JFK is all about anxiety and excitement, and Heathrow is just more anxiety.
Well, she uses the example of Frankfurt Airport. She describes it as a microchip, which is so fitting, right? All about efficiency and interconnection, kind of reflecting our modern world. But what's fascinating is how these spaces that we usually just pass through reveal so much about how we experience travel and the world in general.
I never thought about airports like that. But you're right. They are these unique spaces full of energy and emotion.
Exactly. And that's what Tokarczuk's getting at. Finding meaning in these unexpected places, these seemingly mundane experiences. And it all ties back to the human condition.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. So much going on beneath the surface.
Right. And that idea of digging deeper, finding meaning in unexpected places, that's woven throughout the entire book.
Interesting. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
You see, constellationality in action.
Exactly. Okay, so where do we go from here? What other unexpected places will Tokarczuk take us?
Well, let's talk about Philip Verheyen, a 17th century anatomist.
Oh, yeah. Didn't he dissect his own amputated leg?
He did. Talk about dedication, huh? But the important thing is, why is this story significant in the book? What do you think?
Well, on the surface, it just seems like this extreme example of self-exploration. But knowing Tokarczuk, there has to be a deeper meaning. Maybe something about control. Trying to make sense of the world by understanding the body.
You're getting warmer. Think about those incredibly detailed anatomical drawings Verheyen made. It's like he was on this mission to map the unknown territories of the human body. He was a true explorer, in a way. It all connects back to a bigger idea. Tokarczuk explores the body as a kind of microcosm of the world, full of hidden pathways, just waiting to be discovered.
So just as we travel to different countries and continents, Verheyen traveled through the intricate landscapes of his own body.
Exactly. And in doing so, he uncovered those hidden pathways, revealed the interconnectedness of all things. It's this incredible idea that the human body is its own universe, full of mystery and wonder, just waiting to be explored.
It's making me think about how we often take our bodies for granted, don't we?
Yeah. We get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget about the amazing things our bodies can do and the stories they hold.
It's a good reminder to slow down and appreciate the journey, both the physical and the metaphorical. And speaking of journeys, where does flights take us next? What other fascinating characters and ideas await?
Well, we can't talk about Verheyen without mentioning Friedrich Ruch, another anatomist featured in Flights. But his approach was completely different. Think spectacle. Think performance art.
Oh, yes. Riche was all about presentation, wasn't he? He turned anatomy into a theatrical experience.
Exactly. Imagine this. Public anatomy lessons transformed into elaborate performances. He would dress up his specimens in lace, position them in dramatic poses. He even injected their veins with colorful wax to create these intricate, almost artistic displays.
Wow, so you have these two anatomists both fascinated by the human body but approaching it from completely opposite ends of the spectrum. What's Tokarczuk trying to tell us with this contrast?
That's a fantastic question. And as always, Tokarczuk doesn't offer any easy answer. She presents these contrasting figures, these different approaches to understanding the body, and leaves it to the reader to grapple with the implications.
It makes you wonder, is she suggesting something about the limitations of science? Or perhaps the different ways we try to make sense of death?
Those are great insights. It speaks to the complexity of the book, how it invites us to think critically and explore multiple perspectives.
Okay, so we've got meticulous exploration with Verheyen, theatrical presentation with Ruch. Are there any other ways of approaching the human body that Tokarczuk throws our way?
Oh, absolutely. She introduces us to Blau, a modern-day anatomist who's entirely captivated by something called plastination.
Plastination. Okay, refresh my memory on that one.
Right, so plastination is a process of preserving bodies by replacing their fluids with polymers. You end up with these incredibly lifelike specimens, almost like statues.
Oh yeah, I've seen photos of those. Pretty incredible, but also a bit unnerving. But I'm guessing Tokarczuk isn't just throwing this in for shock value, really.
You know her better than that. I think she's using Blau and this idea of plastination on a massive scale to provoke us, to make us think about our relationship with the body, with death, and with the very concept of preservation.
So it's not just about the technical process, it's about the deeper philosophical and ethical questions that it raises. What does it really mean to honor the human body, both in life and in death?
Exactly. What are the boundaries of science and technology? And what happens when we start pushing those boundaries? It's a question that keeps popping up throughout Flights.
It definitely gives you a lot to ponder. And I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the thought-provoking ideas that Tokarczuk explores in this book.
You got that right. We've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of preservation, it takes on a whole other meaning when you look at the story of Angel Solomon.
Oh, man. Angel Solomon. His story is just heartbreaking. Kidnapped from Africa, brought to Europe, and then after he dies, they actually stuff him and put him on display in a museum. It's like, where is the respect?
It's awful. And what makes it even more powerful are those letters that his daughter, Josephine, wrote to the emperor. She's pleading for her father's body to be returned.
Yeah, those letters, it's like she's giving a voice to someone who was silenced, you know? Challenging those in power who just thought they could erase a man's history and turn him into an object.
Exactly. Josephine's words really force us to confront those uncomfortable realities, the realities of colonialism, and how certain narratives have been silenced or distorted throughout history.
So it's not just about preserving a physical body, right? It's about who gets to control the narratives, who gets to decide how a person is remembered.
Right. It makes you think about all those whose stories haven't been told or have been twisted over time. And this whole idea of relics and their power. It's a recurring theme in Flights.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, like the story of Chopin's heart being secretly taken back to Poland by his sister.
Yes. That story is so full of longing and patriotism. It's like the heart itself becomes this symbol of national identity, like a piece of their beloved Chopin that had to be brought back home.
It's almost like those relics have a life of their own, don't they? They carry so much weight, so much emotion. And it's not just physical objects, right? I mean, Tokarczuk talks about these things not made by human hands, spontaneously appearing religious texts and icons. I have to admit, that one kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah, that one's a bit of a head-scratcher. But I think what she's getting at is this idea that the past is always present, in a way, that traces of it can just emerge unexpectedly, like images in a camera obscura.
Okay, I think I see what you mean. It's like those old photographs you find tucked away or a handwritten letter. Those objects can really transport you back in time.
Exactly. They connect us to the people and events that came before us. It's like those objects become portals to the past. But it's not just about physical relics, right? It's also about how the past shapes our present, even when we don't realize it.
It's like we're all carrying around our own personal museums, aren't we? Full of memories and experiences, and those shape how we see the world.
You got it. And that ties in with the whole travel psychology thing we were talking about earlier, right?
Oh, yeah, okay. I see the connection.
Remember how we talked about how our perceptions of places are shaped by our own personal histories, our memories and desires?
So it's like those relics can transport us back in time, and our own personal baggage, the weight of our experiences, shapes how we see the world around us.
You're getting it. It's all connected. It all comes back to constellationality.
Ah, there it is again.
Right. And remember that lecture on airport analysis? How she breaks down Frankfurt Airport like a microchip?
Yeah, it seemed like she was saying that even these modern sterile spaces have a deeper meaning, that they reflect our society's values and anxieties.
Exactly. And I think it all feeds into this bigger concept that Tokarczuk highlights. She calls it mobility as reality.
Mobility as reality. Is that a direct quote from the book?
It is, and she actually pulls it from an advertisement for mobile phones.
Right.
But she uses it to talk about how interconnected our world has become. You know, the blurring of boundaries between countries, cultures, even individual experiences.
I mean, think about how technology has changed everything. The way we travel, communicate, how we experience the world is crazy.
Totally. But all this connectivity, it can be overwhelming too.
Right.
Like we're bombarded with information and images all the time. It's hard to know where to focus, what's important.
It's true. I definitely feel that sometimes. Like I need to disconnect just to reconnect with myself.
I hear you. And I think Tokarczuk is grappling with these questions too in Flights. It's like she's suggesting that in this crazy, fast-paced world, we need to find new ways to understand ourselves and the world around us.
So where do we even begin? How do we make sense of all this complexity and interconnectedness without losing ourselves in the process?
Well, I think one way is to embrace that idea of constellationality, you know, to recognize that our experiences aren't isolated events. They're all connected. They contribute to something bigger. Maybe it's also about slowing down, paying attention, finding meaning in those small, seemingly insignificant moments.
It's like that inscription on the air sickness bag, right?
Exactly. That simple act of someone recording their thoughts and feelings, their hopes and anxieties in such a random place. It says so much about our need to connect, to leave our mark on the world.
To make sense of our experience however we can.
Yes. And then there's that story about the man who collects and preserves vulvas.
Okay, now that's what I wasn't expecting. It's definitely a unique collection, to say the least. But I'm guessing there's more to it than just shock value.
Oh, definitely. I think it speaks to our fascination with the body, with the things that make us unique, and with the desire to preserve those things, to hold on to them in the face of time.
It's like he's creating this personal museum of human experience, a testament to the diversity of the female form. It makes me think of Blau and his whole vision of a plastinated world.
Interesting connection. But it brings up a big question, doesn't it? Is that really the best way to honor the human body?
It's complicated, for sure.
Tokarczuk doesn't offer a simple answer. Instead, she uses Blau to challenge our assumptions about the body, about death, about the whole idea of preservation. She's asking us, what does it really mean to honor the human form with all its complexities and vulnerabilities?
So it's not about glorifying the body or denying death, but maybe finding a way to respect and appreciate the human experience in all its messy glory.
Exactly. And this whole idea of finding meaning in the unexpected, that brings us to the story of Salman Polakowski and the town of Szybocin.
Szybocin. Even the name sounds kind of mysterious, doesn't it? And I know it holds a certain fascination for the narrator, even though they've never even been there.
It's like the name itself becomes a relic, a trigger for all these emotions and imagined memories. For the narrator, it represents this longing for a connection to a place they've never experienced.
It's amazing how a single word can have such a powerful impact. It reminds me of those times when I hear a song or smell a certain scent and I'm instantly transported back to a specific time and place. It's like our senses have this incredible power to unlock hidden memories and emotions.
I love that. And it makes you realize how powerful language is, right? It shapes our perceptions, creates meaning and connection, even when we haven't directly experienced something.
See, it all circles back to constellationality. We're constantly making connections, finding meaning in the relationships between things, even if they seem totally random at first.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Kunicki and his struggle to make sense of his family's disappearance, Remember how obsessed he becomes with mapping and tracking, trying to find them through technology.
Poor Kuniki. It's like he's stuck in this endless loop of searching, unable to find any peace.
His insomnia is such a powerful symbol of that, right? He's haunted by all these fragments, memories, whispers, like he's missing some crucial piece of the puzzle that would explain everything. And he's clinging to this hope that if he can just find that missing piece, if he can just make sense of the chaos, everything will be okay again.
But life isn't always like that, is it? Sometimes the more we search for answers, the further away they seem to get.
That's so true. And I think Kuniki's story really highlights the human need to find meaning, even when faced with loss and uncertainty, is about how we cope with trauma and that desperate search for explanations, even when there might not be any.
So if logic and technology fail us, where do we turn? How do we find meaning when faced with the inexplicable?
Well, Tokarczuk offers a few possibilities. One is through play.
Play, seriously, in the midst of all that tragedy and loss.
I know, it sounds counterintuitive. But remember that scene where Kuniki meets with the psychologist? And the psychologist suggests they just play. It's like a reminder that sometimes the best way to heal is to let go of control, to embrace the unknown, to experience the world with that childlike sense of wonder.
It's like she's saying that play can be a form of resistance, a way to reclaim our joy and our power, even in the face of overwhelming circumstances.
Exactly. And that idea is reinforced in the story of the Hasidic Jews who are pogo dancing.
Wait, pogo dancing Hasidic Jews? Now, that's an image I did not expect. It's not exactly what comes to mind when you think about religious observance.
Right. It challenges our preconceived notions.
Yeah.
But I think Tokarczuk is using this image, this unexpected juxtaposition, to highlight the incredible diversity of human experience, the different ways we express our faith, our joy, our grief. There's no one right way to be human.
I love that. And it makes me think about all the ways we try to box people in to define them based on our limited understanding and how often we're wrong.
Absolutely. And this brings us to that really interesting moment where two men's gazes meet. One is on a plane high above the earth, and the other is standing on the ground looking up at the sky. What did you make of that scene?
Oh, that one stuck with me. It's such a fleeting moment, but it's so full of meaning. Tokarczuk doesn't tell us anything about these men, their lives, their stories, and yet in that brief intersection of gazes, you feel this profound connection.
Like a recognition of shared humanity, right? We're all part of something bigger.
Exactly. And it makes you think about all the chance encounters we have in our lives, the people we pass on the street, the brief interactions that stay with us even if we never see those people again.
It's like this vast web of human connection, these invisible threads that bind us together, whether we're aware of them or not.
Okay, so we've talked about so many different aspects of flights, but I think it's time to address the big question. What's the overall message here? What does it mean to be a citizen of the world in this age of constant movement and interconnectedness?
Yeah, what are those invisible threads? What are those moments that shape our journeys and make us feel less alone in this crazy world?
What are we seeking to escape from, and what do we hope to find?
And what are our own flights?
It's like she's challenging us to look deeper, to really examine why we take the journeys we do, both the physical ones and the metaphorical ones.
Yeah, for sure. She doesn't give you all the answers, but she definitely makes you think you have to work for it a little bit.
I like that. It's not passive reading, it's active engagement. And, one thing that I keep coming back to is this idea of what we choose to preserve. And WHY, like we were talking about Verheyen with his anatomical drawings and Ruysch with his theatrical displays, even Blau with his vision of a world full of plastinated bodies. It's a lot to unpack, right? What is it about us humans that makes us want to hold on to things, to resist that natural decay and breakdown?
Yeah, it's like this weird paradox. Is it about trying to cheat death? Or maybe it's a way of making sense of life, finding meaning when we're faced with our own mortality.
And then there's the flip side of that. What gets left behind? The stuff we don't intentionally preserve, like that inscription on the air sickness bag, or those messages in the guest book at that remote island shelter. Little glimpses into someone's experience.
Yeah, those tiny whispers from the past. It's like, whether we mean to or not, we're all leaving these little relics of ourselves behind. And it's up to the people who come after us to figure out what they mean, how they fit into the bigger picture.
It's like a giant puzzle, constantly evolving and expanding.
That's a great way to put it. And it reminds me of Josephine Solomon and her fight to reclaim her father's body. It's a powerful story because it forces us to ask, whose stories do we tell? Whose voices get heard? And who gets to decide how a person is remembered?
It's a lot of responsibility, right? But I think those are questions Tokarczuk's asking us to consider as we read Flights.
For sure. She's encouraging us to be critical thinkers, to question the narratives we're given, and to think about those perspectives that might be missing.
To dig a little deeper, basically.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways from Flights. There's always more to learn, more to discover, not just out in the world, but within ourselves as well.
I love that. It's like she's giving us permission to be curious, to question, to embrace what we don't know, to keep looking for those moments of connection, those insights that help us understand what it means to be human.
And that's what makes this book so powerful. It's not just a story, it's a journey. And that journey keeps going even after you finish reading.
So as you go about your day-to-day, I want you to think about your own flights. What are the things that make you feel truly alive? What sparks your curiosity? What makes you want to explore both physically and intellectually?
Pay attention to those connections you're making, the stories you're telling, the traces you're leaving behind. I think you'd be surprised at what you find.
And maybe, just maybe, ask yourself what it means to be a citizen of this world, not just in a physical sense, but in a deeper, more meaningful way.
How can we embrace that interconnectedness we've been talking about, honor the vastness of human experience, and help create a world where everyone has the chance to take flight?
That's a great question to ponder, something to think about as we move forward. Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep those wings flapping.